Okay. Let's start. We ready to rock? To check some magic about Ionic. Am I pronouncing correctly? Ionic?
Yes.
Or it's Ionic?
Ionic.
Cool. So welcome to another front-end development meetup. Some very short announcements. One of them to thank our sponsors that we are kind of switching back and forth because some companies are really helping us to keep this moving. So of course, White Cloud Analytics, thank you for keep hosting the event. Blake, thanks a lot. We also have Certec is being in this movement since the beginning. So thanks, man. And I am also making a Blake helping us with leading the meetup. So this is coming together. Just doesn't depend on any individual, but is the people that are making this happen. If you have any specific topics that you would like to present, any announcements, I think Blake has one.
Yeah. So first off, I want to say thank you for coming up to the meetup. It's really cool to see everyone over here. I was just thinking today about how cool it is to be able to have an event where, you know, we can all come and share something that we're passionate about, talk about all the cool things that we learn in our jobs. So, yeah. One thing I'd like to mention is that White Cloud is currently looking for a front-end developer. So we need someone who can be a full-stack dev, but is mainly a front-end specialist. So yeah, if you want to apply, if you want to apply, just shoot me your resume and come talk to me after this if you want to find out more. I'll give you a little bit of a tour and let you know more about what we're doing here at White Cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, you can say this is an amazing place to work. So there it is. Any other announcements? Any job positions, openings, projects? If not, we can start with Ionic with Daniel. Thanks, man.
And I used to work at White Cloud, and it's an awesome place. Just a little nudge, nudge. So I want to talk to you guys about the Ionic framework. We use that for the Treefort application. And before we jump in, I saw this picture. My girlfriend sent it to me. I don't know if you guys can actually see the words, but it says, "These guys look like they're about to drop an album so hot you have to measure it in Kelvin." And what it has, it's got Neil deGrasse in the back. It's got Bill Nye and Stephen Hawking. Kind of cool.
And it's not Photoshop?
I bet it is. I don't know. So how many of you guys have experience with Ionic? Cool. Okay, about half. Not bad. So what Ionic is, it's very similar to PhoneGap. It's an open source front-end SDK, so it allows you to create mobile applications using web technologies. The difference between Ionic and PhoneGap is that Ionic is actually AngularJS, optimized for AngularJS.
But don't you have PhoneGap as in Cordova?
Yes, yes.
Don't you have? See, I'm right there just trying to learn this stuff. I thought that I used Ionic with Cordova.
Yeah. Oh, did I say Cordova? I meant it's similar to PhoneGap. So Cordova is the base layer, and then PhoneGap or Ionic can sit on top of it.
No, PhoneGap and Cordova are the same.
They are the same?
Yeah, it used to be called PhoneGap.
Okay.
It's PhoneGap. Whoever bought it, they released the free version. It's real weird.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
The open source thing is called Cordova.
But the paid version is the PhoneGap, is what you're saying?
And who has the paid version? I don't know.
I think it's Adobe, if I remember right. It's kind of the same, like from a business perspective, it's almost like the same strategy. They've taken the open source part and given everyone to be familiar with it and use it. And then Ionic, the company that, I don't remember if the company is called Ionic or not, but beyond what they offer here, what Daniel's going to talk about, they are intending to sell services that go with it. So like push notification services, analytics services, you name it. If I remember right, PhoneGap, one of the things Adobe was selling was like the build infrastructure, so they could build your app. That's not something that comes with open source code. They'll build it in the cloud for you.
But
that kind of thing.
Now, can I use Ionic just to build a web page, HTML, JavaScript, and then Cordova, the deal, or PhoneGap? Its cool thing is it takes that same code and then builds whatever. So I don't need to know how to do Java. I don't need to know talking about Ionic through the phone gap, the whole bit, all the way down to the app.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with Ionic, don't shoot me, but I know you guys kind of hate this paradigm, you React Redux people. But anyways, it's a write once, use everywhere paradigm. So you can write your Ionic application once. It runs on both iOS and Android.
And does, if you don't use collection key.
Yeah. And if you guys know Angular, then it's really quick to prototype your application. And another thing that I really like about Ionic, which I'll get into details during the demonstration, but it gives you app history, which I'll give you guys the details about it later. So I want to go through a couple reasons why why we used Ionic. So Ionic gives you mobile-ready components. So I want to compare this to Bootstrap, where it gives you CSS components there. You get your buttons, you get your toggle switches, you get your drop-downs, you get all that stuff. But with Ionic, it's mobile-ready, and it is responsive too, similar to how Bootstrap is. It's just directed toward your mobile audience. Another thing that Ionic gives you is gesture handling. So in one of my demonstrations, there's a side menu. So if you want to swipe left to right on your application, then it opens up this side menu. So gestures like that, swiping, tapping, holding, anything like that, Ionic supplies for you.
And it'll work on an Android or an Apple.
And then, so I think it's called Glyphicons. Is that what it's called? For Bootstrap. Ionic supplies you the same things, but they call them Ionicons, kind of a cool little name. They give you some general icons. They give you Android-specific, iOS-specific. So depending on the directives that you use, it actually caters toward your audience. So you can your Android users will see your Android icons. Your iOS users will see your iOS icons, stuff like that.
Is it a font or are they SVGs or?
It's a font.
So it's context specific. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this NG Cordova, it's not specific to Ionic. You can actually use it, say with PhoneGap, Angular. All it is just an Angular extension for the Cordova API. So it gives you access to the camera, to Touch ID, and I want to show you the next slide because it actually shows you a photo. I don't know if you guys can actually read that, but it gives you the breadth of more of what NG Cordova can do. Really what we used it for the Treefort app are notifications and some of the other native UI components like action sheets and stuff like that.
Could you go back to the previous slide just a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's all the stuff that's built in the phones.
Yep. And yeah, it just gives you access to the phone layer.
I think
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely was nice because if you use the native Cordova plugin, the native plugin APIs, they're all different. Some of them have implemented, they've lined themselves up with the W3C spec for the feature spec for how this API is supposed to work. Geolocation being an example of that. And other plugins just have bizarre APIs, but NG Cordova wraps all of the popular Cordova plugins with Angular services. So they all look like similar Angular services instead of just kind of bizarre things bolted onto the window at different places.
What do they do for media files, for playing video and sound?
Those we just use, we just use the HTML5 implementations of those, and I'm not sure like the details of it, but that's all we use. So it's not NG Cordova specific, I don't think.
Yeah, the media player, I don't know if you have the Treefort app, the media player is just built on top of the HTML5 audio API. We're using just the streamable links that you can get from certain services. It's pretty straightforward. We built wrapper services on top of that, just in Angular itself. And then that's the great thing about Ionic is you can kind of build your own homegrown Angular components and then work that in with on top of Ionic's ecosystem as well.
Could you build wearable stuff, Android watch things with this stuff?
I'm
Have you
actually
seen
not
anything
sure.
about that?
I've never seen that.
Okay.
I don't think you can do it right now.
Yeah.
So there's no Treefort wearable?
Next year for the next team.
Special gifts.
So I briefly want to mention the creator app that Ionic has built. Really what it is, it's a prototyping tool, a drag and drop. You can drag and drop Ionic components onto a page, and you can quickly scaffold up an app. Just for designing, it's not like it's not production ready or anything like that. But I use it for a couple side projects, and it's relatively new, so not all the functionality is there, but it's growing really fast. So soon, it'll come soon.
What do you mean it's not production ready? More work to do it, or do the whole thing
Yeah.
again?
Well, production ready meaning that like it's only going to get you probably 3/4 of the way there. If you want to really pixel tweak whatever UI you need, then you probably need something else.
Can you take what you got from this and?
Yeah, I believe you
add
can
to
export it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So enough with the slides. I kind of want to go over some demonstrations. And very similar to how Xcode, when you first start a project, they give you a few template applications to start from, like a tabbed application or a side menu application. Ionic has supplied you with the same. So I downloaded a couple of their starting applications, and I want to jump into the tabbed one first. And I just want to show you how easy it is to, and this was downloaded directly from the site. I didn't mess with it at all. If you just run like an Ionic serve, then what that does is it creates a live reload server for you, and it automatically spawns whatever app it's supposed to be running. So if we try to debug this, I think that's kind of small. But anyways. So this is the tabbed functionality. You can go through chats. It's all kind of cool. It looks native. It looks good. But I want to talk to you guys about the app history that I was mentioning before. So if we jump into chat, and then we go dig into Ben Sparrow, then when you switch tabs, what do you expect when you go back to the previous tab? Like a lot of single page applications actually take you to the root of the application, to the root of that tab. But with Ionic, this is a gimme. It actually takes you back to whatever was on that tab last. And then you can go back, and it saves that entire history underneath that tab. Another thing is that if you dig deep into a tab, then you press the same tab again, it actually takes you to the root of that tab. So it's kind of nice. Trying to mimic that with local storage or anything like that, it's a pain in the ass. What else do I want to cover? Do any of you guys have any questions so far?
Well, so
Yeah.
getting on,
Yeah.
how did you get this? I mean, did you go to GitHub or something, or?
No, there's actually, let's see, I have the script right here. Let's see. So if you do an npm install of Ionic, then you can just run an Ionic start.
So npm it, and then just say Ionic start, and this is what's going to show up?
Well, you have to bring down the Ionic command line tools first. And then after you have the command line tools, then you say Ionic start, name of your application, and whatever template you want to use. So I showed you guys the tabs one, so you do tabs. And then what it does is it pulls from Git, and I believe it runs some type of a initialization script, and it just links everything together for you.
I think I just caught on. So I'm reading a book, how to do Ionic, and I'm realizing he says in our book we're going to do mostly command line interface.
Yeah.
So that's why I've never seen these pictures, but I can do this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hey Daniel, when you say that the app has history, like what I couldn't read what like the side of your dev tools said.
Oh, well, I didn't mean for that.
Okay. So like, how does it track the history? Like, is it serialized to an object, or is it?
Honestly, I don't know the details about it.
Okay.
But yeah, do you guys have any?
Essentially, I think each page is its own context. So if you go back to the page, it's just flipping back to that context of where it left off.
Okay.
I don't know how it's actually stored.
Yeah.
I bet we could Google it.
I bet we could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Start, that generates the application, the template application for you. Ionic Serve actually creates the web server and it spawns the page for you. Yeah.
Those are just templates. Show them the, like, run, show them the run platform.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Okay.
So, CD, app tabs. And so, yeah, the Ionic Run platform. So if I do Ionic Run iOS, what it's going to do, it's going to build the platform, or build the application for iPhone. And then since I don't have my phone set up or anything, it's just going to spawn an iOS simulator. It's kind of cool, definitely out.
Can you do that on a Linux machine?
Yes.
Not for iOS. You have to have a.
Or Mac.
Can I run the iOS emulator on
Yes.
this platform? Yeah.
Oh, no, you gotta be on a Mac.
Might be able to do it with that.
But the Mac can do Android.
Yes,
Because
yeah.
what
I was going to
it's
show that
done-
next too.
No, it's
So if
done.
I can spawn it
That's
for,
what I was wondering.
It is.
Okay.
So when you did the Ionic Start back there, you were basically saying, I got this app, add this kind of feature to it, the side menu, and then you said put the tabs on it, I mean, boom, boom, suddenly you had that?
that's just the beginning template. And
No, but I mean, you got then kind of
Yep.
something to start with.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And that's what was going on there.
Mhm.
Okay.
And that's actually what we scaffold the Treefort app using that too. So we have the side menu. I'll dig into it a little bit. Did I spell it wrong?
You haven't platform added
Oh.
yet.
You know, it's pretty impressive. You don't have to use Xcode directly.
Well, to get it on the App Store.
Okay. Typically, you'll find it end up doing something.
Anyways, so while that's building, the
So reading into the app history a little bit, I think it's just a shared service. There's an Ionic history service. So I don't think it stores anything down to persistent local storage or anything like that. So it's not like if you closed your app, you'd be able to come back and go to it. It looks like it's just in memory, but
just
that's just from
That's not right.
3 minutes of reading. So like globally shared service would allow you to like have that so it didn't destroy itself every time. So I think that makes sense.
that makes sense. Alright, so it's still trying to compile something.
So now the emulator took a bit of time to get up there.
Yeah.
Once it's up there, it's okay, you can continue to shoot new apps to it.
Yeah, but you still have to push your code to the simulator, which is pretty fast after you have
Right,
it.
but you don't have to build the
Yeah.
simulator. They call it a simulator, don't
Hmm? Are you talking about the?
I was reading someplace.
This is the Android simulator. This is the iOS simulator.
they? Right,
what you're talking
Apple
about?
calls it simulator where everybody else calls them emulators. But,
Oh, okay.
you know, but I mean, it's the same thing, it takes a little bit of time to get the thing good to go.
Mhm.
But then you're just copying your code into it like you would a phone.
Right. Yeah. It's easier to prototype something using Ionic Serve because it's a live reload session. So you can, whenever you make changes to your code base, the Ionic is constantly watching that code base and it automatically refreshes your web page when you need it.
Specifically through
Oh.
gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait a minute, now Ionic Serve is a web page look at it rather than the emulator, is that what we're looking, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So for example, this is very off track, but if I jump into here, the chat detail, type chats. So if I go into here, and I don't know if you can see that, but I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna change the title chat, so I'm just gonna change it to hey, or hello world. So when I save this, unless I already killed that session.
You did.
Did I? Oh yeah, I did kill that session.
More than ever.
So it already says hello world, but I'll change it back.
Yeah.
So there. So with that save, did you see the chats switch on that? So it really helps for quick development, faster.
So I mean, you're
prototyping.
typing it in almost as you look and see what
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
was the, what you see.
the Treefort app, we also had tests all hooked up to this, so you'd change your code, and you'd see it in the browser. The test would spawn and run.
Yeah.
It was really nice compared to a slower cycle. The slower cycle development on the iOS and Android specific versions, but really we only did that. We only did the builds to iOS and Android when we were kind of ready to officially test it as users. Yeah, we mostly did our development in the browser for both platforms.
You can do the styling is pretty. It's pretty darn close. Like you can do styling stuff because, especially if you're, it's going to be developed on roughly the same web view kind of container sort of thing that it's going to be in iOS and Android. So it's really really good for styling stuff. But of course, there's a lot of things that you need to definitely work on the device to catch and test out, like local storage hitting a limit. And but I run into the same thing too with I have another app with like GPS stuff, so you can try and emulate it, but use a browser to emulate and change your location. But until you get like on the device and actually use its emulation, just things operate a little bit differently. So it's great for just styling out something. It's super awesome to not have to wait for that emulation to happen.
So now the web page version, you can't swipe things and stuff like that.
Oh, you can.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
And he said you can pretend it's got a GPS or pretend it has an accelerometer or something.
Yeah, I haven't messed with those things specifically, but
they
you can.
they say they can do it.
The browsers have that capability.
They do. Okay.
Yeah. So most of the debug tools now have that capability to do all kinds of
So your code doesn't crash.
things. Right.
Yeah.
So one question, I just heard that we are having WebKit as the canvas of the app. Now, is the application content, HTML and JavaScript stored locally in the device, or is retrieved from the server?
It's stored locally on the device.
But you're also, I don't know if you're going to talk about Ionic Deploy. I don't want to steal your thunder if you are.
Talk about.
But maybe. Deploy. So, so Ionic Deploy, because of the fact that you're running in a WebKit container on both iOS and Android, once you really come down to it, you're just, if you make a release, you're just releasing new JavaScript, HTML, CSS files. So as far as the app stores are concerned, when you do a release, that's not really anything that changed. You can just have a binary, think of a shell that loads in your HTML, JS, and CSS files, and then kicks the app back off. So Ionic Deploy is this thing that started, I think middle of last year. It's one of the huge big features of Ionic is that you don't actually have to do a full app store release when you change your code if there's certain types of changes. So if you don't change the binary, like if you don't add permissions, if you don't add new Cordova plugins, stuff like that, you don't need to go through the full app store approval process. You can release, and Ionic has a nice service with Ionic.io. You actually push your code up to, and then you have a little list, so you can like do some testing. You can say deploy, it actually will deploy it out, and then the apps will look and be notified and fetch that code down on an update.
So if your first app does require those permissions, like access to camera or
Yep.
whatever, if those are in place, then can you still use Ionic Deploy for the second,
No,
third
that's
iteration?
exactly when you would want to.
Yeah.
Like, if you knew exactly what services your app was going to use in the
Yeah.
beginning and did one release, you would
That's
never
huge.
have to go through an app store release
I
again.
could
So,
use that tomorrow.
yeah. So I was just talking with a guy who has some software that he uses to give to auto mechanics, like independent auto mechanic places, and he was going to use an alternative to Ionic, and I was like, I had never heard of it before, and I was like, well, you're going to have like one app per auto mechanic place. And he's like, yeah, like hundreds, right? He's like, yeah. And he's like, so you're going to have to go through a release process every time you update your code?
That's
And he's like,
exactly.
yeah. It's like, well, how about you look at Ionic? There's this Ionic deploy thing, you can just push it out. So I think I converted him over or he converted himself.
He converted himself.
Yeah, no, it's pretty slick. To me, it's a huge selling point of like if you're trying to convince a client or for your project just to have something and you don't have to go through that app store release. And just think about Treefort having a bug in the middle of the event and probably is such a short window that you can't even get a fix out of it if you had to go through an abstract approval process, because it's kind of a variable time, right? You don't.
Did you use it for Hackfort? The deploy?
Tree for, yeah. Yep.
We had it enabled, and I think in around December or so, we pushed out some updates using
Yeah, I
it.
think we tried.
They weren't like critical things, they were just things we wanted to fix. But when it came, later in the game, we pretty much just deployed on the App Store every time because we had time. Because we had plenty of time to do it. One of the things we were worried about with Ionic Deploy was that the way it works is it would check to see if there was an update in one session, and I forget when it actually would refresh the app code. I think the app had to be
You had to kill it, yeah.
There's some
to have
That
callbacks
was
and stuff. Yeah.
you had to wait and kill the application before it would actually update.
So we basically wanted to be sure, like, say for example, that by the April 4th, when the Treefort people were going to announce that, hey, there's a new scheduling feature now, we wanted to be sure that on April 4th, that the code had been pushed to the person's phone, and so then we basically did a deploy to the App Store on, March 25th or something like that, and got it out there, so we're pretty sure they were going to be able to say that. With Ionic Deploy, we weren't sure. Maybe if they add some analytics to it, I don't know if they have since then, that would tell you what % of apps that have received a push, something like that might help. But we kind of shied away from it towards the end when we were time sensitive about announcing features of the app.
So what I'm hearing is pretty cool. Sounds like the application on the web container is data, right? So it can get the dynamically replaced, like updates.
Yeah, it's a live reload, so it's actually typical live reload, like you secure, it's just you go watch it, check stuff.
Now for the production application, do they charge anything for the service?
They don't yet.
Not yet.
They don't charge any money for anything, but you can kind of see the idea that some of these value-add services that do require infrastructure on Ionic to maintain.
Yeah.
Ionic Deploy has a website. They store all your binary.
Yeah, so you can like roll back releases too.
Well, and
Just
there's
click and it'll deploy it down.
Microsoft Code Push is an alternative that works for React Native and Ionic. And since it's Microsoft, I think for now they have a GitHub for it, but I don't know if it's a free service.
Yeah, the one thing that is a big asterisk with this is that we were using a lot of alpha and beta services. A lot, like I think the Ionic hot deploy, which is what we're talking about, where you can change binaries without having to do an App Store release, was in like extreme alpha. Push notifications were, but still it worked relatively well for what they were saying. They were saying pretty much do not use this in production. It worked out.
In like June or something, which
Yeah.
was, that wasn't really that long ago. Using anything.
What does Apple think of?
So Apple, the funny thing is, as far as it goes for anything that is web containers, JavaScript can be, that's the only language that they
That's their
allow
other
for you
app, I
to
think,
hot
right?
deploy. You can change the binaries without actually having to make an App Store release. You don't have to go through their normal release cycle. And that's the only language that they allow you to do that with.
Okay.
So if you want to change like your index or any of your normal web binaries or assets, sorry, you can do that without having to go through it.
It's very interesting.
So another great thing about the whole Ionic deploy thing is that there's also Ionic View. Are you going to talk about that? Or can I? It's just so cool. So I've been using that with my project. So Ionic View basically allows you, since it's really the app, it's just going to run in a web view container anyways. You have Ionic View that you just install Ionic's app on iOS or Android, and because they have access to your code, you push it up and it's on their Ionic IO website for you to administer and roll back and forward releases. You don't even need to release an app store to share your app with clients, which is a big barrier in application, like native application development. It's like, well, how do you share something? Because Apple has some stuff, but like, to do it in a seamless way. So you can actually push your app to just a generic Ionic View app, and you can send somebody by email an invitation to go view and test out your app. And it's pretty close, because I mean, it's essentially you're running on the same web view container, whether it was your app that was hosting that or somebody else's app. So I've actually been using that to help just push stuff out and see it. I actually haven't even run it on a device yet.
that on a browser, or do they have to be on a device?
Probably on a device, I think. I'm not sure though.
But you can, the way we were doing development for Treefort, you can put, it's not recommended to serve an Ionic application, but you can serve it.
You can put that on your own server.
You can throw it on.
Yeah.
We're actually doing just continuous integration with basically Amazon S3 and Circle CI. So we'd push to get Circle CI would run all of our tests, and then we would bundle that up and push that over to S3. We had master.treefort lines, then we moved to app.treefort lines. And you could view that basically the latest build whenever you wanted to as well.
Yeah.
So you always have that option too. Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah.
You're doing a kick-ass job.
Let's see. I actually didn't know about Ionic View, so that's really cool. Let's see. So this is the Treefort application. It's very we scaffold it from the side menu app that Ionic gave us. It's pretty cool. You know, I don't really know what to show you guys of this other than like we have some list views. Ionic supplies you with all those. Actually, that's not a very good example. Here's a better example. So you have a list view. One of the things that we came across, let's see. So Ionic, they advise you not to use ng repeat, but they advise you to use collection repeat. We found this to be just a disaster on some other, it created a bunch of problems for us. Like, so for example, ng repeat, what it does is it generates the entire HTML for you, spits it onto the page. The problem with that is if you have a lot of elements, then it's going to be displaying the entire list. So for example, this artist page, say, has 500 artists in it, and we're going to have 500 elements in that one view. That's a lot of elements. So we were using collection repeat, and what that does is it only displays, say, like the first 8 elements, and it only creates like a sliding range of those 8 inside your iterable. So that's what it does. That's what we used here. But what collection repeat doesn't tell you is that you can't do sorting, you can't do reordering, you can't do scroll to directives, I mean. And so, because none of those elements are actually on the page. Yes?
So I do have a question. I used your app quite heavily during Treefort.
Okay.
One thing I noticed, and my brother even got this up, if you're on the schedule, what we found out kept happening is like we wanted to know what was next. You know, because we had our favorites, but we missed something. We had to just scroll and scroll
Yeah.
and scroll.
Yeah, we got that feedback from a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I think next year, what we intend to, we know also, we heard that people wanted to be able to see old stuff that they
Yeah,
can't
no,
do.
that's
So
important.
basically they could kind of remember it.
Yeah.
But I think we will have a default mode where the stuff that's already happened in the past is gone.
Yeah,
You don't
I
need
was
to see
thinking
it already happened.
somehow, but-
The other thing that came up is people basically wanted to know what's next everywhere.
Sure.
Not like what's next in a long
Well,
series
it's a
of
really,
things that are
really
happening.
fluid event.
But
'cause,
just like
you
what's
might-
next to me? What's next to the Wahi?
Well, what happened to us is like we had plans, and I want you guys to go and explain how you did your line thing. I'm curious about that. But you always have plans for Treefort, but you get to a venue and there's a line around the box, and you're like, oh crap, like what else is going on? You know?
Yeah.
So that's just, I love your guys' app. It was super helpful. That was my observation.
Yeah, I'll tell a little story about that when
Yeah.
I get up there. Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks.
Yeah. So my presentation's basically done. I just was walk through. Do you guys want to do this?
I have a quick
Do you-
question.
Show the music thing.
Yeah,
Show
the
the
music.
music.
Okay.
Yo, Danny.
Hey Daniel. So was the scrolling issue that where you know like on Sunday it was terrible? Was that a side effect of using the collection versus?
What was the scrolling issue?
Well, basically you had to scroll down to like Sunday.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Kind of, because there is a directive that Ionic supplies. You can say scroll to directly onto the element, and it's supposed to shift that element to the top whenever it's supposed to. But because the collection repeat only displays that element when you're within that range, it wasn't even on the DOM yet, so it didn't see it. So that was a side effect of that.
The reason to use collection repeat is performance.
Sure.
The ng repeat, because it puts a lot of stuff in the DOM, will slow your phone down. And if you do use it on low-end phones especially, you will see this frame draw. as you try to swipe smoothly through the list. And so we use collection repeat, but like Daniel said, it has downsides. But it was just truly just a design oversight that we didn't make it easier to basically fast forward through any given list to today, to what's on my schedule, to what's at the venue that I'm at, because those are all good scenarios. We thought about the schedule, the full all event schedule, as something people would probably mostly use through filtering and up front, and we didn't realize quite so many people would want to see it during like the heat of the moment at that festival. We put all that stuff that you'd want to see heat of the moment on the home screen, like what's next on my schedule, but didn't think, we did think of the idea, we just didn't have time to do it. An interesting thing that happened with the whole workflow of this is the events for Treefort aren't really well known until about, what was it, 3 weeks before Treefort? Like they don't actually know when they're going to happen. And so,
It's that
and
combination
we had
of making
never
it too secret because you don't want everyone, you don't want it to leak out what it's gonna be, but then they're not letting the development team know until it's almost too late.
Well, and I think you guys, as far as using Ionic, it's great. I mean, the app was really responsive and everything. These are just small things that, like I got where I wanted to go. It wasn't a problem.
what we're really excited about. So the people who worked on the app, Daniel, myself, Blake,
Jeremy.
Will, who's not here, and Jeremy. What we're really excited about is we feel like we finally got the basics done. We didn't have any of these things when we started, and now we've been through a full cycle where we got the events. We had 3 weeks to basically bang out something that was useful based on the event data that we had, and we got like enough. And now we're getting feedback from people like you saying, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that, given a baseline of useful stuff. And really the things we're talking about here now they're not rocket surgery. They're just small things and like the better views, easier ways to filter. Something a lot of people didn't know about in the app, if you can show this, Daniel, is that you in the search you could type almost anything. And so like if you type, for example, Sunday, go ahead and type that. Not end day.
End
but,
day.
you know,
Yeah. No, they
Look at that, look at that.
Like Saturday.
It's like there's a lot of kind of power search things that no one really knew about. How would you ever find that? Except by accident. Exactly. One of the ideas that came up was basically like your phone is shaking too much, so maybe you should just tell you like it looks like you need to get a hand or something. On the home screen, it's just like big hand as that. Just go over there. That kind of thing.
So now, this year, I mean, in the middle of Treefort, if you had fixes you wanted to push out, can you do that? Could you have done?
We certainly could have done that, and we would have done it with Ionic Deploy had something
that
like
would
that
be the
come
way
up.
the method.
Yeah, because that would have meant that for a lot of people who had the app closed or for whatever reason, the next time they launched it, people that had closed the app during the festival, the next time they launched it, they would have gotten the very latest version of the JavaScript code. It was extremely unlikely at that point that any of the bugs in our app would have come from the native integration. I think the last time we added a native permission or something around that was probably in December. I mean, seriously, a long time ago.
So now, this is the different app than was last year?
Yes, it was.
Totally.
A little bit of a story on that. We worked with the guy Phil Merrill who had built the app in the prior years, and when he did it, it was kind of his own independent project, and he worked hard on it, but he was just kind of burnt out and tired and wanted to do other stuff, and that's okay. And we asked him, do you want to give us your code? Do you want us to work on it? And he kind of went, no. It would be better for you to go do it your own way. And I think
he's been there before.
Yeah, it was also a Cordova-based app. It was, I think he was using, I forget what you. What?
They're using,
Was it Onsen? That was a framework that pretty standard. It's
basically the same thing they use on My Boise State, because that's what Phil and.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. I forget exactly what it was, but it was a different view technology than Ionic. So as far as being able to start over was quite honestly good for all of us because we got to learn something new. One of the reasons that white cloud engineers and other people decided to volunteer and do this is it's a good opportunity to try new stuff. We don't use Ionic here at White Cloud. I think we will someday, but it's not like our mainstream thing to do phone apps. And so being able to work on this and kind of start greenfield and do whatever we thought was best at the time was good. Now we have a baseline, and we've been talking about how to make this code more approachable for other developers as new people want to come and volunteer and help us out in the next year. That's a big point of emphasis for us in the next year. I guess
Is there
you wanna-
anything that you won't do in the app where you're concerned that where maybe Ionic will hem you in?
I can't think of anything yet, man. I don't know.
Go through like some of the music and the music stuff. And,
Well,
like,
let's see
show
the
off,
music
like,
thing.
just
How many people
cool
actually
one.
have used this? I was just kind of wondering. A couple people?
Cool. You're in for
Just
a walk through all the views because they're all pretty sweet.
So Jeremy and Daniel and Blake did a lot of the work on the music stuff
So
that we
just-
put in here. We believed early on that one of the data set we do have early on for Treefort to build as the basis of the app for people like in December and January are the artists that have been announced and the music for those artists. We wanted to make sure that people could listen to stuff and get a feel for what it was going to be like even before it was even possible to know on what day the artist would be playing and where to go and when should I even get tickets, like will I even be able to go.
So I was getting emails while it was going on about different forts that were starting about, and had I told them, because they had to do with programming and stuff, and do those things just pop, did they just pop up? Because I'd never heard any, I didn't never go to any of them, so I don't know what the deal was, but it was kind of like, you were mentioning that you don't know the music artists until the end. It sounded like there was other stuff that they were creating on the fly.
The forts are kind of well known, at least the concept of what it's going to be, the Hackfort, Yoga Fort, and those things. And they
These
send,
were
they
like
send
little
notifications about
specific
that.
things they were working on or something, or maybe
I'm not
they
sure.
were part of the fort and they were just telling me this is what we're gonna talk about or something.
Maybe, I don't know. So what are we looking at here, Daniel?
So this is the artist view, and to create your own, I'm going to show you guys how to create your own custom playlist. So say you really like Acid Dad.
It's not to like.
What's not to like? Yeah. So you can create your own playlist. If you guys were watching this earlier, I generated a new My New Jams playlist, and so I can either add this song to My New Jams, or I can just create a new one right here. And then if you go back to the listen view, it gives you a list of all the curated Treefort playlists, or you have your own type of playlists. So I want to dance. I want to dance right now. And let's listen to the internet.
Whoops.
Oops. Is that playing out?
I think it's
Oh,
playing
it's
out
playing
the
out.
speaker right now.
It's playing out of the projector, I think.
There's the mag.
I feel like I listen to this.
Alright. Anyways, but you can actually cycle through any number of these songs, and it just it's using the HTML5 audio. HTML5 audio element, and that's how we're playing the music through the speakers. We're streaming it through SoundCloud that way. So what I just opened up was the modal. It's the now playing modal, and so we have gestures attached to this, so you can actually swipe up or swipe down. It opens and closes the modal, so you can actually, yeah. We also have swiping on the album art, so you can switch to the next song in your playlist. It's pretty cool.
And the songs in the playlist are in the cloud, on the device.
They're in SoundCloud. So
SoundCloud is out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So we use the SoundCloud API. SoundCloud is just a streaming service, a music playing service, and they can they supply you with a streaming URL, so you don't have to download the entire song. You only have to download, say, like the next 3 seconds of the song. You're constantly downloading that song to your device. Yeah.
And then the playlists, so there are the 2 playlists at the bottom are the ones that Daniel just created. The other ones are curated by the organizers of the festival. And so they're coming in through the official Treefort SoundCloud account. So that's why he has all ages preview, for example. Like those are
And where did his My New Jams went
to the bottom.
Went to the
your
bottom.
personal ones are
So
down.
there's
These are my personal
Right.
ones that I created, yeah.
And that's not in the official Treefort SoundCloud, is it a different SoundCloud?
Well, it's not part of the curated playlists.
Okay.
So I can generate my own playlist if I want.
You're limited to a set of songs that they have. Basically, you're limited to basically one song. It's surprisingly difficult. It's like herding cats to get the music you need from artists for the festival. So they'll go through and curate a bunch of those links, and then basically you can make your own different sets
Okay.
of playlists.
Yeah, so then my new jams are something different, are subsets of
Okay.
sanctioned.
They're just lists of the songs that were already there.
Right. Yeah.
I don't get to.
We were trying to build here, and this the whole concept of different playlists was something that we came up with the Treefort organizers maybe in, was it January or somewhere around there? Like we were just looking for things to kind of add before the events and schedule features needed to come out. And one of the things that came up, and I'll kind of segue into a little bit of my talk, is we have a backend that the same team also built, a backend service that provides all the data that's used by the app, whether it's the list of artists or these playlists that you're seeing here, the curated playlists, the ones that were provided with the app. That service, we just kind of came across the idea of, well, we needed a gateway sort of to get some of the SoundCloud information to marry the artist info that comes from Treefort with information about the tracks that come from SoundCloud. And doing that in an app was kind of challenging and hard. And so what we did is we pushed that business logic back to the service, the cloud service that would do it. And when we did that, we went, well, wait a second. This is now we're doing most of the heavy lifting, the SoundCloud ID handling in the back end. Why can't we do more here? Hey, we asked the Treefort organizers, hey, do you guys want to have playlists in the app? And they're like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And so that's how this stuff came about. And then Daniel, wanted to add the ability. Then once we had that, the ability to create some playlists that you could run also on your device. In fact, I think that was the original idea.
Yeah.
Was to let people build their own playlists. We were just going to have basically this one, the playlist of all artists, alphabetical order. It's exactly how everyone would want to listen to music. It's in alphabetical order.
That's a playlist.
And so building your own is kind of just a cool thing that we were able to do because we pushed enough of the business logic back into the server so that it was really just mostly Ionic kind of heavy lifting, not too much.
If you wanted to play a song directly from the artist page, then we'd have to have a way to generate your own playlist too. So you can have temporary playlists that you can store those songs that you're playing from that artist page. So, we kind of needed that functionality for that to run too. So we kind of killed two birds with one stone when we generated the multi-playlist.
Yeah.
Did you want to?
I don't really need to use my laptop. Maybe I can just Slack you the picture. Will that work? Are you on Slack there?
Which one did you send me through?
I guess the Treefort one. Will that work?
I think so. Just waiting for you. It's already on the screen.
So it was a lot of fun building the buffering logic for the HTML5 audio player because they don't really, there's nothing that it does to tell you, hey, the song is buffering, it's not playing right now. You have to kind of figure it out yourself. So that was always one thing because if you're on a desktop, it's probably not a big deal. You're not going to really buffer that often. So it's like that would have been a feature, probably would have never made, but because it was mobile devices, it's like, well, and there's going to be a lot of people potentially in a small area, you have to do it. So it was very interesting. You're still using the HTML5 audio player, but you have to try and find some rules of thumbs around when is it probably going to be buffering, which means that basically not playing and loading. Because
You wanted to throw something on the screen that
it's
people
gonna be
know.
like a little spinner that will wait and it'll try and buffer ahead before it lets you play again. And then once you get too close, it stops and lets it buffer a little bit further. So you kind of have to have some like a hysteresis type of thing where you sort of wait for it to get too slow and then like buffer some ahead.
Wait for it to get
which is
slow.
So you can kind of see what he's talking about. If I just start playing a song here, then we have it's kind of hard to see on the projector, but there's a loader there. And it's already streaming. And then there's the pause button. So That's what Jeremy was talking about with the buffering for that.
What if I hit my home button? It'll stop playing.
Actually, no.
No,
The-
we've got background.
yeah, background audio worked
We also
really well.
integrated with iOS the forward and backtrack lock on the lock screen
Nice.
too. So and yeah, you can play this while you're browsing throughout the whole application.
Can you lock it there,
We just
Daniel?
used a couple of Cordova plugins that were whipped up. We ran into. I thought something that was interesting. We did run into a couple of
I think you
issues
do have to
with
go.
iOS
Yeah.
updates. You do have to be careful when you're using Cordova plugins because they're a lot of the time they can be homegrown, and so like I think it was like iOS 9.2 or something came out, and we lost our forward and backtrack functionality in there. So we were digging through some Objective C, trying to figure out what was going on with that. It's pretty sweet though. I mean, like there's the cool thing is that all these plugins are a majority of them, as far as I've seen, are open source, so you can go and play with them and send your pull request if you want to fix a bug or things like that. So yeah.
What were all the plugins we ended up using in the end? There was the one that was specific to showing iOS the remote controls.
The forward and backtrack on the lock screen and the home. That's one plugin.
The one for push notifications.
One for push notifications. I think that do we even have to do anything with no? The cool thing about the HTML5 API is that you can just background it. I think that there was something that we had to add that allowed you to background your application. Now that I think about that, actually,
I can't remember.
there wasn't a ton. No more than like 4 or 5 plugins really that we really depended upon.
Yeah, and those are the Cordova native plugins that actually had native code per platform. Everything else was just JavaScript.
Just because you said HTML5 audio a bunch of times, so I worked on the web team of Treefort, and with the player, using the HTML5 audio player on the site, that it would keep playing and then you would navigate to a different artist and then the old song wouldn't turn off. And so it didn't out of the box, so to speak, know that when a route changed that it should stop playing. So that was really awesome couple hours of time.
Yeah, one thing to note, if you do mess with HTML5 APIs, they suck.
Yeah.
You probably, that's why we built a wrapper on top of that. We basically built like, just previous, next, change track, jump track, things like that. The HTML5 audio API is it's pretty primitive, you might see.
50 events that fly at you.
Yeah.
You load a song.
The documentation isn't that awesome for it, but I think it's not too crazy to figure out once you just start playing with it for a little bit. Yeah.
Now, did it actually work the same on Android and iOS? I mean,
Yeah.
it seems pretty
The
amazing.
music stuff was really pretty seamless. I can't remember a time when
but everything.
we had problems with music. Some of the key bugs I can think of were we decided we would only support Android 4.4 and above based on previous year's usage data that kind of showed that below that we weren't going to get a large percentage. It was going to be like we were going to leave behind like 5% of the previous year's users.
And there was a big change. I think 4.4 was a
4.4, the key thing that's different about it was it had the evergreen web view added in it, and so we were more assured that we were going to be caught up as far as specific web technologies we were using versus with 4.3 you get kind of what you get, and we didn't want to. We were spread really thin. I think before, I don't know if you used an Android device, but I was the only one who used an Android device on the whole dev team. And so it was like
one test.
it was like we had like one tester, great. So we didn't get a lot of traction on that, but
it came out.
We on 4.4, I think we ran into a couple render bugs. They weren't the end of the world, certainly.
Probably a thing for next year is to use crosswalk. But
Yeah, that would let you go further back, but it'll be one more year.
Yeah.
More of the phones will have died. we did pretty good. We definitely got as far as the usage data. Now Treefort publicized the app a lot more this year because we were interactively working with them and making sure they knew what was new, and they really wanted people to use it versus trying to figure out how to do scheduling through the website, because that was kind of our intent, was to make schedule in the moment scheduling and things work out really well. And so it got it got far more users based on the App Store usage data, at least for Android, because we were able to carry that over from Phil's app. I think on iOS we didn't get to have it. Apple wouldn't let us have the old usage data if I remember right. But we got the previous year usage data, and we had a lot more people regardless of the loss of Android 4.3 and below.
No, what if people had Android earlier than 4.4?
They would have been stuck on the old published version, the version that said 2005 on it, unfortunately.
Okay, they can't load it. Just
That was kind of our choice. We wanted everybody who had it in the previous year to get the update to the new version. And so when we pushed we used the same app ID that we'd pushed, that Phil had pushed the previous year's app with. We transferred the ownership of that app over from him to us, from him to the Treefort. Yeah, this thing is kind of cool. So the backend service that we created, which I'll go through a little bit of how it works and what it does. It was hosted on Elastic Beanstalk, and this is something we got from Elastic Beanstalk that shows the requests served. Can you refresh it so that it's a GIF, because it shows some facts, or it should be a GIF. That's yeah.
It was skipping earlier.
It doesn't loop or anything, so you can make it go again. Well, anyway, the high points, we've annotated what the high points were. Why? I'm not sure that it really correlates with why people were using the app, but they were different or displaying in different places. I think we were at this is 30,000 per hour here. So our back end handled quite a few requests in a short amount of time. Basically, the peaks are around 8 o'clock every night. You can see this is when people were figuring out their schedule before Treefort, and then here's everybody using that to look at their schedule or maybe figure out their schedule on those days. And Sunday, being Easter and all that, and kind of wind down. I think people already knew what they were going to do by that point. So that's kind of fun.
Would you say the number was? I wasn't watching.
But this number is like 33,000, I think. 33,000 requests in an hour. The app, in general, some of the views will just make really one request to the server, and some of them will do one, and then to fill in additional information, we'll do 2 or 3 other separate requests. So any one view is from like 1, I'd say, to 5 requests back to the server. So yeah, I want to talk just a little bit about the backend. The backend, we decided to use Node.js for that because we were kind of in a learning mode on JavaScript anyways, doing Ionic. I mean, I don't do a lot of front-end development. I do when I don't. I just do full stack. But as far as using new things, my opportunity to use new things is generally not at White Cloud when it comes to front-end, right now anyways. And so I wanted to do that, and then Will also wanted to learn more about it. He hadn't done Node.js development, so we said, okay, well, we're going to do it that way. And we first built it because when we first started to add features to the app, the very first feature we were going to add was the list of artists and the news that was coming out of the Treefort website, and both of those data sets were being served by an Azure endpoint that was designed a long time ago for content management, for driving the website. And what we found early on is that the payload size of those things were way too big. We really didn't need much information at all to display in the mobile app. And so what we decided to do is to build an API gateway that would reduce the payload size to just actually what the mobile app was using, as well as augment it with a few other things. And that's how the service started. So the first version of the app used that, and then we just fell into other kinds of things that were useful to add to the back end. I mentioned playlists earlier. The first thing we wanted to do was try to push some of the SoundCloud interaction from the app itself, where it's kind of hard to maintain, back to the back end, so we can fix things. If issues came up with SoundCloud integration, or we had bad SoundCloud IDs, we could resolve them in the back end without having to update the app at all. And so we pushed that behind us, the gateway back into the mobile app. Playlists came out of that. The linometer feature, I don't know, most people don't call it that. I don't even know if it's called anything in the app. It's just a thing. The app has a feature that we couldn't see here because it's sort of time sensitive, and that is that when you've added particular events to your schedule, then we show them on the home screen of the app. And then on that home screen, we also show what the line is like at each one of the venues, because Boise is kind of, the venues are sort of spread apart, and it takes a little while to get from place to place. And if a venue is really popular and there's a lot of people waiting in line, and you have the wristband that doesn't let you skip the line, you don't have the really expensive wristband that lets you skip lines. you're going to be waiting in line. You may not even go. It may not even make sense to go. You may just want to go somewhere else. And so we added a feature so that venue managers had a way to toggle what the length of line is at their particular venue. There were volunteers that maintained the lines and that let people in and things, and they were the ones who were able to control. So you asked, how does it work? It works. It's human. It's completely human powered.
That's perfect.
it's
It's not magic.
It's the simplest thing that could possibly work. Is that somebody who knows how long the line is can pushes a button to say how long is the line.
Location on your phone and
We had all kinds of really cool ideas about how to do that, like how to make it magic, and we talked through like tons of different ideas.
Yeah.
We almost went with one that would let attendees say what the line length was. We had like even kind of a design for how does that work, and how do we keep people from spamming it, ruining the experience for people, like saying the line is ridiculously long at the place that they want to go. You know, that would be a kind of a nice trick. So we went through all that, and then we went, nah, let's just make
Keep
it.
it simple.
We started doing some of the volunteer work because we made the same app last year as sort of an add-on to the app, a separate web app that kept track of Treefort lines, and then we called it Linometer at that time. This year, we wanted to integrate it straight into the schedule viewing experience, and so that's what we did. And yeah, it was pretty much as simple as it was last year. Venue managers learned how to do it, how to set the status on the website, and then people all got to see that line status. And we tried to make it fun. We had line lengths. Originally, we experimented with a design whereby it would kind of have like a visualization, like a bar of how long the line is, and we didn't know if that would mean anything to people at all. So instead, what we did is a text-based description of short 5 minutes, medium 10 minutes. It's all just kind of a guess on the venue manager's part about how long they think that will take for the line to clear out. And then we added Sea of Humanity, which means we have no idea. And that line status is popular for some reason.
The entire population of Boise.
Yeah, the entire population of Boise, I think that only got used once. We also collected data in the back end about how often the venue managers were setting these different possible statuses.
And what'd you find?
I don't remember. I can bring it up, but.
But were they kind of working at it?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely. I think we had the venue. I want to say the statuses were changed a total of 200 different times. One thing we also did is it had a time fall off on it, and that sometimes the venue manager in the heat of things wouldn't have time to set the line status, and so we didn't want the thing to be stuck on bad data for a long time. If the venue manager said the line's really short, 5 minutes, and then the line gets ridiculously long, but the venue manager never has time to go back and update it, we basically would stop showing the status over time so that it wouldn't ruin everybody's night because it said the line was long, but it wasn't. If that makes sense. So that we ended up putting the Linometer business logic into the backend service, and then the final reason that we did the backend service, and we talked about this early on, was we wanted to have a very clear spec, a very clear protocol for what the data looks like that the app requires to operate. We had grand plans to make it so that the app itself could be used by festivals other than just Treefort. And to do so, they would certainly need to kind of do a rebrand of, well, what does it look like? They don't want monsters and sticks and that kind of junk on it. You know, that won't make any sense. But if we could have a theming concept, and a festival could provide its own implementation of this back-end specification, then they could use that too. Now that's a crazy idea, and maybe we'll someday do that, maybe we won't. But it's good to have a clear definition between what your front end needs and what the back end provides, and having our own API for that was a good starting point. And I think it may bear fruit in the next year because we should be able to do that same kind of thing to make it so that the website works better. Maybe to allow Hackfort attendees to make cool apps based off Treefort data, because we can say, hey, here's the spec for the Treefort data. It's not just random data. It is exactly what the data means. This is what an event ID is. I think that'll be cool. So that's the back end. There's the usage graph. That's all I got.
So what's the design on the back end? Do you have a RESTful API? Do you have a back end? Do you have a search engine?
I'm sorry, what was that last one?
A search engine?
A search engine? No, we didn't do any. Well, I won't say that. We did do search through the API, in that you could ask the API to give me information about 10 different events by ID, and it would return all 10. It was the design of our REST API was 0, 1, or n. You could ask any endpoint for 0, 1, or n of these different things, and it would return them all to you. Some scenarios for that were, it's not really worth going into. It's not terribly interesting. It was very simple. The REST endpoints are all very, very simple.
We built on top of Express. We used Express to basically scaffold out all of our routes. It's very lightweight.
Yeah, we used Express for the routes, route definitions. We were talking about using, what was the IDL type thing?
Oh man, are you using? No, you're not talking about that. You're talking about. I don't remember right now.
We wanted to have a little bit stronger spec for.
Oh,
we still
Swagger.
Swagger, that was
yeah.
the one. We wanted to use that tool to.
Sorry,
to
what's IDL?
Interface definition language. Old programmer's term for new thing. Sorry.
Which one's Angular again?
Swagger is a way to define REST endpoints, kind of in a separate from the code way.
It's a great way to describe your REST endpoints and have your sets of required parameters, expected responses, things like that. It's super awesome. So, yeah.
We didn't get that far with it though. What other technology? We used MySQL because we were familiar with it. When it came to time, and we were in crunch mode here definitely when we were trying to add the linometer feature, we went, where are we going to store all this information about the line status? And Will said, well, we use MySQL here at White Cloud, but I want to see what MySQL's like in Node.js. Like, what's it like to use the API there? And so he went and grabbed the MySQL Node plugin and banged something out in like 30 minutes. And it totally worked.
Now, where was the server?
We used Elastic Beanstalk to host it, which is Amazon's super simple way to host web code. It's built on top of Amazon Web Services, but without all the complexity that can come with that.
Similar
You
to
basically,
Heroku, right?
it's very similar to
very
Heroku
simple.
if you're
It's
familiar
cheap
to that.
too, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't spend very much on it. It makes it very easy to auto scale. We were worried, well, maybe the mobile app will swamp the server when people go crazy and use it all the time. So we felt comfortable that we could scale it up to as many instances as we needed to handle load. I think we ran with 2 instances just because Will was paranoid about it.
Yeah,
But we turned it back down.
It was $55 for the 5-day period.
And that's
right?
definitely because we turned it up to 2 instances for a long time. Yeah. And it easily handled the load. There were no warnings out of it that I can remember.
So how much dependency did the app have on the back end? Like, if they didn't have any internet or whatever.
I think that was a design flaw in how we did build the interactivity, the connectivity between the app and the back end. Basically, when you had no data connection, you'd see the progress bar kind of thing for quite some time, and eventually it would give up. And really, you couldn't see anything about the artists, you couldn't see anything about the events, you couldn't see a list of playlists, you certainly couldn't play music because that's streaming. Really, I don't know what you do except look at some pictures. Look at the nice visual design. Press the menu button and watch it slide in and slide out. I think that's what you could do. I think like I say, that's flawed in that it worked really pretty well most of the time in my experience using it at the festival, but in situations where you were on Edge Network or something like that, or where you really weren't getting cell connectivity regardless of what your phone thought it had, then you couldn't use the app for a lot of common scenarios like, all right, so I'm listening to this, but where am I going to go next? I'm trying to get my phone out and use it, and you just get the progress indicator and then nothing. So,
Sorry, does Ionic give you anything with help with that in terms of
not that I remember.
You probably go offline, almost like an offline first type of thing, syncing up sort of deal.
Yeah.
Because you can use there's an SQLite plugin that you can use to access the underlying file system storage on your phone, which is like the long-lived, can stay on there pretty much forever. There's different tiers of storage, but yeah, but then that requires a whole nother sort of syncing type thing where you're going to fetch and store. How old is it? You need to refresh it type of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm actually using Pouch and CouchDB for doing SQLite stuff to syncing stuff, which might be something interesting to look at for next year.
Yeah, that was the main thing. One of the things we've talked about is in the next year, what we didn't know up front, again, a lot of things we didn't know were what are the dynamics of planning Treefort. None of us had worked on this really before. So what all goes into that? What happens? Well, we found out, one of the interesting things we found out is the schedule, once it does get published, you know, 3 weeks before, it's pretty much consistent, except artists cancel. I mean, events get completely canceled. Sometimes things have to be moved between venues. But it's not like everything changes every day. A few events changed, you know, per day, that kind of thing. And so I think knowing that now, it's not like we need to continually be pulling this information from the internet. Make sure we get the very, 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 very latest information, because it doesn't really, in reality, didn't change all that much. I think we will be able to do an offline first sort of thing. We'll be able to cache a lot of this stuff that, you know, these mini requests that went to the server, I think we'll be able to drop that way down in next year, because most of the data will just be cached on the device the first time you use it. We'll get the artists, we'll get the events, we'll get the news. And then if we can get to the internet to get newer stuff, well, great, we can update that.
I do want to add something. You mentioned SQLite. We had a problem using local storage. So whenever you use local storage, if your phone is actually almost to the cap of how much storage it's got, it's going to clean out local storage for you. And that was unexpected behavior for us. So a lot of people, including myself, actually lost their schedule, they lost their playlists, and it was kind of a nightmare to try to bring it all back. But, you know, we didn't know that at the time, so use SQLite.
Well, in particular, be careful about where the phone actually stores these things. Specifically, the iOS puts the local storage in a caches directory, and I think this was well known since iOS 5 that iOS likes to clean up the caches directory for every app. When the device starts to run out of space, don't believe the local storage may be there.
So that's only an issue if you're using local storage?
Specifically local storage. But two, with any of the Cordova plugins, you do have a choice when you get to the native interaction about where your user data gets saved. And I would not, on iOS, choose caches.
Is there this like,
Well,
there's like
whenever.
local storage, and then there's index DB still, and then there's otherwise you can go all the way down to the file system underneath. So
Yeah, because we thought it was simple, we just went with an Angular service that wrapped the local storage APIs directly, and it was extremely simple. And it worked great in the web browser too, when we were doing rapid prototyping, because local storage is an API that's available in the browser too. It doesn't require a Cordova plugin at all, but in this one case, and we all had, you know, phones with 32 gigs, but not everybody, not everybody has a lot of space free on their phone, like.
8 gig Nexus 4.
Exactly. I don't think the problem affected Android at all. I don't know if Android has the same case. I didn't hear of it on Android, but
It does seem a little odd to blow off a thing called local storage when you're clearing a cache. I mean, a cache is a little.
I mean, especially like 10 bytes of like, it's like people's schedules. It's not that much. You're not delete their photos first. Come on, they don't need it. Anyway,
Would you guys consider doing like user profiles in the future, so you could just get completely around that, like giving us a profile?
yeah, we
Stores like previous Treefort and information.
we talked early on about whether the app would allow people to log in or not. So basically to identify themselves and have a way for us to, in particular, we wanted to have a way to, once you're identified, then we can store your stuff in the cloud, and you'll be able to go to the Treefort website if you happen to want to sit down at your computer and figure out what your schedule is. Get that same schedule information there. But again, with a baseline of nothing, and all of our time being only volunteer whenever we can happen to swing it, what we decided to do was to sort of decouple from that idea and go, we're going to try to make a scheduling experience on the phone first and only. And then along with the people who work on the website, we said, let's try not to do anything on the website. And on the website, as much as possible, say, hey, go get the app and use the app on your own personal phone to make the schedule, so that we didn't have to worry about trying to do login, so that we didn't have to worry about trying to do anything with personal identity, because that was kind of a concern, is would people want to log in, identify themselves to Treefort, in concept? So we kind of went completely away from that. We went, this year, we're not dealing with any personal identity, we're not doing login, and we're not going to try to eat the whole thing all at once. Just get scheduling pretty good on the phone, and then we'll have the platform in the next year to go, well, okay, now we can do login, and now we can sync your schedule to the website. I really do think that in the next year we'll do something where your schedule will not only exist on your phone. So then regardless of whether iOS wants to delete your local storage or not. It'll still be around.
So the website is not built on the same thing as the mobile apps, right?
You could talk more about that.
So website. So there's the Azure, the Windows backend, and that was like the source of capital T truth for all scheduling stuff. You guys built an API in Node to ingest stuff from Azure. We ingested it directly on the we used Angular on the website, and you guys use Angular, but our two Angulars were not the same
So
Angular.
has there been discussion or consideration of unifying those?
Yeah, in fact, we're even talking about that a little bit on Friday, about
Because-
how we can do it better in the next year. One cool thing with this, I mean, the code we wrote for the mobile app could totally be reused on the website.
Right.
It may not be. It may or may
the-
not be appropriate. Like it may not be the best user experience for the website. What people might want to do is schedule on the website.
Schedule would be a lot better. The schedule on the website this year was giant JPEGs.
Giant JPEGs. So
You guys
because
do
of the
that.
scrolling issue, I woke up one morning and decided to go to the website, and it's worse.
I think the intent of the website is like, well, we can't build a good interactive scheduling experience, but for people who would kind of print this thing anyways, and that's sort of what they were expecting on the website, well, we can give them a giant JPEG.
And so the website was basically the same as the website was. The website this year was almost the same as the website last year with different assets.
Yeah.
But all the other like stuff, all the logic was the same. And then you guys also had the benefit of having you worked together anyways, and you were all volunteers. And so that's like made your stuff that much better. And so we always had kind of pictured like, okay, website's gonna be the same and app will be new, and then next year website takes a step up, and then website next year is equal to app this year, but app next year is.
But why not have one?
That's a great question.
One base.
Yeah.
It seems like you could do it all from
It
this.
will be. We're gonna talk about that. We all have a secret meeting on
There's always room for different use cases. The website certainly, the website as an example has to serve assets and information about sponsors and how to become a sponsor, and things like does the mobile app need to do it? Well, maybe. We do feel like the mobile app will be the thing that you will use in the heat of battle when you're at the festival, and we want that to be as good as it can possibly be. And the website will be the grand displayer of all information about the festival. Even heat of the battle stuff now I think we can do that really well, but more too. And the website also has, I'd say, a lot more creative surface area.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the art and graphics and work that goes on there is a lot about the Treefort brand, and our team is not as deeply exposed to the marketing side of Treefort, and so on purpose we did our graphic assets ourselves, because I personally like to do that stuff, so I'm like, I'll do that. I like to make graphics. So I'll do it. Yeah, I invented the stick burger.
Yeah.
The stick burger's all right.
So did you have it, were you using Agile project management or not?
We use Trello as a project management tool. We talked through. We had a product owner was Megan, who's one of the Treefort organizers, and she kind of gave us ideas for like what could be in the app, and we would put those in a backlog column on Trello, and then as we figured out when our possible opportunities to release a new app with a new set of features that would sort of make sense given the whole life cycle of Treefort, when artists are announced and when different things happen, then we kind of built a new column in Trello, and we moved some things into it that we thought we would do. Our sprints were basically like a month and a half long milestone that goes from.
So they were long sprints.
Yeah, they were really quite long. And again, with volunteers, like whenever you would get to something, I mean, sometimes things would hang out until the last week, to the last day. Other times things were done right up front.
But
with
you got it
volunteer,
done.
yeah, we definitely got it done, and I'll always say
Yeah,
it
it
was
hasn't
good
always
enough.
been like that.
It was good enough, but definitely not good enough.
You should see our Git log for like the previous 3 weeks prior to the actual festival happening. We got like probably 40 commits just
Yeah,
in
we
that
were
time.
smashed.
Busting it out.
Yeah, I think that one thing that Ionic really made this a lot easier was being able to bundle and push it out to the App Store. Will is not here right now. Will managed a lot of that life cycle, but it definitely made the project a lot easier to manage. It's one thing to take into account.
And Ionic has, I believe now a service for that as well, don't they? Doesn't Ionic have a build service now?
I think so. Where you can build
That-
and push to the App Store. And I think
At
full
least to give you
integrated.
your assets. Like, for example, if you only had a Mac and you couldn't build the Windows binaries, well, they have a way to build that for you. Or if you only had a Windows PC, didn't have a way to build the Mac binaries, then Ionic could build that for you. If I remember right, they've got a new service in beta that's around that. And that's like I said, what PhoneGap and Adobe was trying to do is, well, we'll give you the code and the platform for free, but we'll sell you some services that will replace computers, hardware that you would normally have.
The Mac can build Windows?
Well, you certainly
Android?
can, but you'd have to buy Windows. You can build Android apps.
Oh,
So we didn't use anything like that, and basically it was we would Will would build the iOS binary and upload it to the store, and I would build the Android binary and upload it to the store.
Did you bother with Windows Mobile?
That's what I use personally, and so we did bother with it. And the one thing that kept us from doing anything with it was actually collection repeat. Ionic now formally supports Windows 10, I think. They've committed to actually making it work. But Ionic, as it was a couple months ago, before they did that, everything worked perfectly. It's surprising. On Windows 8, Windows Phone 8, it worked perfectly, except collection repeat didn't work. Collection repeat, that fancy virtualization thing they do with the list views, that's hard to do. I'm glad Ionic knows how to do that, because I'm not going to try to implement that stuff in HTML. I think I have tried that before. It's not a good idea. But it would not render the elements at all on Edge or on Internet Explorer. So we're like, well, how many people aside from Wade will use this?
You said you're a Windows Phone guy?
Yeah.
Because?
I like to believe that the underdog can do something better, and it's true, they can. It's actually
Microsoft is
better.
the underdog.
In this space, they
Yeah.
I have a question. Can test-driven development? Can you do test-driven development on apps like this kind of thing?
Yeah.
Sure.
Daniel did a lot of test-driven development on that for the playlists. I set up the Gulp. Basically, Ionic Serve is using Gulp under the covers to do all your build assets. So Gulp, for those of you that don't know, is just a front-end build process task runner, basically. And yeah, we set up a bunch of unit tests using Karma, Chai, and Karma as the test runner, and then Chai as our assertion library. And you shimmed up all those, doing a lot of TDD with that, so you can go ahead. So that's your big.
When creating your own playlist, there's a lot of reordering songs in your playlist, just a lot of business logic, and I wanted to create some tests around that so we can build a better quality playlist manager. I don't really know what to explain more than that, but
Yeah.
Well, you didn't want your user being your tester.
correct, yeah. So yeah, we just built a bunch of tests, so it would try to hit as many use cases as it can.
Did it help?
I believe it helped. Peace of mind for me at least.
On the backend component, we also had tests using the same JavaScript test frameworks to make sure what we didn't want to happen is a bug. A good way to break the app fast would be to deploy something to the server and break all the apps. So we had a battery of tests that would run in Circle CI before it would deploy the code to Elastic Beanstalk. And I think we caught ourselves a couple times with that.
Okay, we're just on time, fellas. It was so interesting. I think everybody was very engaged. Thanks a lot for attending. Unless we have anything else to cover.
There is one cool thing to bring up with this though, since you're talking about Angular 2 and you're talking about converting over from Angular 1.5. The Ionic team has worked hand in hand with the Angular team, and specifically they're moving Ionic to Ionic 2.0. This is an Ionic 1.0 application. Ionic 2.0 is written in TypeScript and Angular 2, and you can actually go and start running your application now. So I think one thing that's on the horizon is moving from either prepping the application to get to a good point to where it can be transferred over, or actually just going and fully transferring it over to a 2.0 application as well.
Are any
So
big benefits to 2.0? Like,
as far as it goes, I mean, like, Mauricio had a great talk on that. There are a bunch of cool aspects to it. I think that strong typing, being able to nest all of your CSS with your components, and I mean, I think that the model, the Angular 2.0 train of thought is just a little bit nicer to wrap your head around, like especially like understanding the data binding and how all that works. But yeah.
Yep, and we have so many things to keep talking. I just want to be respectful with you guys' time. And before talking about anything else, being so grateful about the volunteers on Hackfort. Man, I mean, add it to your workload. You jump in to get extra stress, ship this thing on time. Kudos, I just asked the list from Jeremy. So we have Wade, Daniel, Jeremy, Will, Blake, Andrew, Matt, Taylor, Josh. Fucking amazing, guys. you guys are amazing. So thank you so much for delivering this great product. It's so impressive. Even unit tests. Holy. Thank you so much. Thanks all for coming to the meeting. This is a wrap up.
Yeah.
Even unit tests.
Yeah.